If you want to master yourself, your words, your thoughts, your emotions, you must start at the foundation. And that foundation is self-awareness. Because how can you change what you don't even see? How can you take control of something if you're oblivious to how it operates? The truth is, most people are running on autopilot. Their emotions dictate their reactions, their thoughts shape their reality without scrutiny, and their words spill out without a second thought. And then they wonder why they feel out of control. The first step to reclaiming that control is paying attention. Not just passively noticing things here and there, but actively watching yourself in real time. Catch yourself in the moment when frustration rises, when doubt creeps in, when anger flares up. What's triggering it? What thought preceded that feeling? What assumption are you making? This is where true self-awareness begins. Not just acknowledging emotions when they explode, but tracing them back to their roots before they take hold. And here's the crucial part. You don't judge what you see. Because self-awareness without self-compassion turns into self-sabotage. You don't berate yourself for feeling angry or anxious or insecure. You observe it. You analyze it. You understand it. And then with clarity, you decide how to respond. That's where control is built, in the space between awareness and action. Now let's take words. You might not realize it, but the way you speak, both to others and to yourself, shapes your entire life. Words have weight. They create patterns in your mind, reinforcing beliefs about who you are and what you're capable of. Someone who constantly says, "I'm terrible at this," or "I always mess up," isn't just stating fact. They're reinforcing a narrative, and that narrative shapes their reality. If you want to master yourself, you have to start listening to the words that come out of your mouth. Every sentence, every phrase, every subtle comment about yourself, it all matters. And this extends beyond just words. Your thoughts, those internal dialogues running in the background, are scripting your future. What do you tell yourself when you fail? What do you believe about yourself when no one else is around to contradict you? Most people let their thoughts run wild, never questioning them, never redirecting them, and then they wonder why they feel stuck. Self-awareness demands that you tune in, that you start catching those destructive thought patterns before they dig deeper into your psyche. Instead of "I'm not good enough," you replace it with "I'm learning." Instead of "I always fail," you say "I'm improving." It's not about lying to yourself. It's about choosing a perspective that moves you forward instead of holding you back. The same principle applies to emotions. If you're unaware of your emotional triggers, you'll be ruled by them. Something as simple as a critical comment, an unexpected inconvenience, or a minor failure will send you spiraling. But when you develop self-awareness, you begin to notice the patterns. You see that it's not the external event causing your reaction, it's your interpretation of it. And once you see that, you have a choice. You can let your emotions dictate your response, or you can pause, assess, and decide how you want to move forward. That's real power. But let's be honest, this isn't easy. It requires effort, discipline, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself. It's far easier to blame circumstances, to point fingers, to stay trapped in the illusion that life is just happening to you. But if you choose that path, you forfeit control. You remain a puppet to your impulses, your habits, and your unchecked emotions. Self-awareness is the first step toward breaking free from that cycle. Because once you see, you can't unsee. Once you recognize the thought patterns, the destructive language, the emotional triggers, you now have the power to change them. And that's where true mastery begins. Words are not just sounds. They're not just noises that spill out of your mouth without consequence. Words shape reality. They define the way you see yourself, the way you see others, the way you interpret the world around you. And yet, most people speak without a second thought. They don't realize that every sentence they utter is reinforcing a narrative, one that either builds them up or tears them down. Think about it. How often do you hear people say things like, "I'm so stupid, I can't do this, nothing ever works out for me"? They're not just expressing frustration in the moment, they're laying the foundation for how they perceive themselves. They are programming their minds with limitations, reinforcing the idea that they are incapable, that they are stuck, that their failures define them. And the more they say it, the more they believe it. The more they believe it, the more they act in accordance with that belief. This isn't just some abstract theory, it's deeply practical. If you tell yourself, that you're bad at something, you're far less likely to put in the effort to improve. If you tell yourself you always fail, you'll hesitate to take risks. If you say that life is unfair and you're doomed to struggle, you'll start seeing evidence of that everywhere, because that's how the brain works. It filters reality through the lens you give it. And your words determine that lens. But this isn't just about negative self-talk, it's also about the way we speak to others. The words you use in conversations shape the relationships you have, the opportunities that come your way, the reputation you build. If you constantly complain, criticize, and express negativity, you create an environment that reflects that back at you. People respond to the energy you put out. They either withdraw or mirror it. And over time, that shapes the entire trajectory of your life. Now, this doesn't mean you should be delusional, walking around pretending everything is perfect when it isn't. That's not strength, that's avoidance. But what it does mean is that you have to be intentional with your words. You have to choose language that moves you forward instead of language that holds you back. Instead of saying, I can't do this, you say, I haven't mastered this yet. Instead of, I always fail, you say, I learn from my mistakes. Instead of, I'm worthless, you say, I am improving. It's not just about being positive for the sake of it. It's about training your mind to focus on solutions rather than problems, on progress rather than setbacks, on potential rather than limitations. Because here's the thing. Words don't just describe reality. They create it. They influence your emotions, your confidence, your motivation. A simple shift in language can mean the difference between giving up and pushing through. It can mean the difference between feeling powerless and feeling in control. And if you think this doesn't matter, try this. Spend a day being hyper aware of your words. Listen to how often you speak in ways that limit yourself. Notice how often you complain, how often you use absolutes like never and always, how often you frame yourself as a victim of circumstance rather than an active participant in your own life. Once you see it, you can't ignore it. So start choosing your words deliberately. Speak in a way that aligns with the person you want to become. Use language that reflects strength, resilience, and capability, because whether you realize it or not, your words are shaping your future. Every sentence you speak is either reinforcing the best in you or the worst, and the choice is entirely yours. Your thoughts are not harmless, they are not insignificant, they are the blueprint for your actions, the silent architects of your reality. What you think about, what you dwell on, what you allow to take root in your mind eventually manifests in the choices you make, the habits you form, and the life you create. And yet, most people walk through their days completely unaware of the constant stream of thoughts shaping their decision. Pay attention to this for just a moment. Think about how often your mind defaults to negativity, to doubt, to hesitation. How often do you tell yourself, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, it's not even worth trying? These aren't just idle thoughts, they have consequences. When you repeatedly entertain the same patterns of thinking, they begin to harden into beliefs. And once something becomes a belief, it directs your actions without you even realizing it. If you believe deep down that you're not capable, you'll hesitate before taking on challenges. If you think you're destined to fail, you won't put in the effort to succeed. If you assume the world is against you, you'll interpret every setback as confirmation of that belief rather than a test of your resilience. And here's the real danger. Your brain is wired to seek evidence that supports what you already believe. If you tell yourself you're powerless, you will only notice the moments where you felt weak. If you tell yourself you're stuck, you will overlook the opportunities right in front of you. But the opposite is also true. When you begin to shift your thinking, when you consciously choose thoughts that empower rather than limit, your actions follow suit. If you decide to believe that you can improve, you'll start looking for ways to grow. If you think of failure as feedback rather than defeat, you'll keep pushing forward. If you adopt the mindset that you are responsible for your life, truly responsible, your decisions will reflect that sense of ownership. This is not about blind optimism or pretending that everything is perfect. It's about seeing reality as it is while choosing a perspective that moves you forward instead of keeping you stuck. Because here's what people don't realize. Your thoughts are not facts. They feel real, they sound convincing, but they are often nothing more than conditioned responses, echoes of past experiences, or projections of fear. You don't have to believe everything you think, That's where true mastery begins. When you learn to step back and observe your thoughts rather than be controlled by them, you gain the ability to reshape them. And when you reshape your thoughts, you reshape your actions. If you want to change your life, you don't start with external circumstances, you start with the mind that interprets them. So the question is, what thoughts are you choosing to nurture? Are they leading you towards strength, discipline, and growth? Or are they keeping you small, afraid, and reactive? Because whether you realize it or not, the quality of your thoughts will determine the quality of your action. And the quality of your actions will determine the course of your life. Emotions are powerful. They surge through you like a storm, demanding attention, influencing your thoughts, shaping your words, and ultimately driving your actions. And if you don't learn to master them, they will master you. Most people go through life reacting, pulled in every direction by fleeting feelings of anger, frustration, fear, or excitement, without ever stopping to question whether those emotions should be in control. But here's the truth. Emotions are not commands. Just because you feel something doesn't mean you have to act on it. Just because anger flares up doesn't mean you need to lash out. Just because fear grips you doesn't mean you need to retreat. Just because doubt creeps in doesn't mean you have to believe it. The moment you realize that emotions are signals, not dictators, is the moment you begin to take back control. Think about how often people sabotage themselves because they let emotion take the wheel. A moment of frustration leads to words they can't take back. A wave of anxiety stops them from seizing an opportunity. A feeling of discouragement convinces them to quit just before they would have broken through. And the worst part, most of them don't even recognize what's happening. They tell themselves a story, that person deserved my anger, I wasn't ready for that challenge anyway, it just wasn't meant to be. But underneath it all, it's simple. They let emotion dictate their response instead of choosing their response. Now, this doesn't mean you should suppress what you feel. That's not control, that's avoidance. And suppressed emotions don't disappear. They build up like pressure in a dam until they eventually explode in ways you can't predict. Mastery isn't about denial. It's about awareness. It's about stepping back in the moment and saying, I feel this, but what do I want to do with it? This is difficult and it takes practice. When anger rises, the easiest thing to do is lash out. When fear creeps in, the easiest thing to do is retreat. When sadness sets in, the easiest thing to do is spiral deeper into it. But easy is not the goal. Strength is. And strength comes from learning to sit with what you feel without letting it control you. Imagine if, in those moments of intense emotion, you paused just for a second. You let the feeling exist without immediately reacting to it. You took a breath. You asked yourself, what's really happening here? What's triggering this response? And what action aligns with the person I want to be? That single moment of awareness, that space between feeling and action, is the difference between someone who is ruled by their impulses and someone who has mastered themselves. And here's something else to consider. Emotions, left unchecked, create patterns. The more you give in to an impulse, the stronger that neural pathway becomes. The more you react in anger, the easier it is to react in anger again. The more you retreat in fear, the more natural it becomes to back down. But the opposite is also true. The more you choose to pause, to think, to respond with intention, the more that becomes your default. This is where real power lies. Not in pretending you don't feel anything, not in being cold or detached, but in developing the discipline to feel everything and still choose your response. That's what separates the strong from the weak, the successful from the stagnant, the masters from the victims of circumstance. Because at the end of the day, life will provoke you. People will test you. Challenges will arise. Emotions will come, whether you want them to or not. The question is, will you be the person who reacts without thinking, or will you be the person who chooses their response? Because that choice, that single moment of decision, is where real strength is built. Your life as it stands right now is the sum of your habits, not just the big obvious ones, the way you eat, the way you exercise, the way you work, but the subtle ones, the ones you barely even notice, the way you think, the way you react, the way you speak to yourself when no one is listening. These patterns, these loops of behavior have been formed over years, reinforced by repetition, solidified into the very structure of your brain, And if you don't take control of them, they will take control of you. Habits are powerful because they operate beneath the surface. They don't ask for permission. Once established, they run automatically, like a well-worn path in the forest. Your brain loves efficiency, so when you repeat a thought or an action enough times, it locks it in. This is why change feels so difficult, because you're not just making a decision, you're fighting against deeply ingrained neural pathways that are trying to pull you back into what's familiar. But here's the key. Just as habits are built, they can be rebuilt. The brain is not fixed, it can be rewired. The challenge is that it requires conscious effort. Most people never bother to question their patterns, let alone change them. They assume they just are a certain way. Undisciplined, anxious, impatient, prone to anger. But that's not true, that's just habit. And habits can be broken. The process is simple, but it's not easy. First, you need awareness. You can't change what you don't see. What are the habits, mental, emotional, behavioral, that are keeping you stuck? Do you wake up and immediately scroll through your phone, flooding your mind with distraction before the day even begins? Do you default to self-doubt every time a challenge arises? Do you let frustration dictate your response when things don't go your way? These patterns don't feel like choices anymore. But they are, and once you recognize them, you have the power to interrupt them. The second step is replacing the old habit with a new one. Because habits don't just disappear, you have to give your brain something else to latch onto. If you want to break the cycle of negative self-talk, you don't just silence it, you introduce a new voice, one that is firm but constructive. If you want to stop reacting impulsively, you don't just suppress the reaction, you train yourself to pause, to breathe, to respond deliberately. If you want to escape the habit of procrastination, you don't just tell yourself to be more disciplined, you build small rituals that make action automatic. And then, the hard part, repetition, over and over and over again. Because the first time you try to change, it feels unnatural. The old pattern is still there, pulling at you, tempting you to go back. And most people do. Not because they can't change, but because they don't push through that discomfort long enough for the new habit to take root. This is where most people fail. They assume change should feel easy. They expect motivation to carry them. But motivation is fleeting. Discipline is what rewires the brain. And discipline is nothing more than choosing every day to override the impulse, to slip back into old patterns. It's taking control of your habits before they take control of you. Because here's the truth. Your habits are either working for you or against you. There is no in between. Every small action, every repeated thought, every unconscious response is shaping the person you are becoming. And if you don't take that seriously, if you don't deliberately construct the habits that align with the life you want to build, you will find yourself years down the road wondering how you ended up where you are. So start now, identify the habits that are holding you back, replace them with ones that move you forward, and repeat every day until the new pattern becomes the only pattern, because the future version of you, the one who is stronger, more disciplined, more in control, is built one small habit at a time. Mastery isn't an accident. It doesn't happen by chance, and it certainly doesn't happen by waiting for the right moment. It's built deliberately, systematically, through a simple but profound formula. Awareness plus intention. That's it. If you want control over your words, your thoughts, your emotions, if you want to break free from destructive habits and forge a stronger version of yourself, this is the key. You must first become aware of what is driving you, and then you must consciously decide what to do with that knowledge. Most people never get past the first step. They live in a kind of blindness, reacting to life without ever questioning the deeper patterns at play. They speak without considering the weight of their words. They think without questioning where those thoughts come from. They feel emotions and assume those emotions must dictate their behavior. They stumble through life in a haze of unconscious habits, never realizing that they are the architects of their own reality. But awareness changes everything. The moment you start to pay attention, to really observe yourself, you begin to see the patterns. You notice how certain words reinforce negativity. You catch yourself slipping into destructive thoughts before they take hold. You recognize the triggers that send you spiraling into anger or self-doubt. You start to understand the mechanics of your own mind, the machinery that has been operating beneath the surface all along. And once you see it, You can't unsee it. But awareness alone isn't enough. You can't just notice your habits. You have to take responsibility for them. And this is where intention comes in. It's not enough to realize that your words have power. You must decide to use them wisely. It's not enough to understand that your thoughts shape your actions. You must deliberately choose thoughts that move you forward. It's not enough to recognize your emotional triggers. You must train yourself to respond differently. Intention means deciding in every moment who you are going to be. It means refusing to let old patterns dictate your future. It means catching yourself before you react in anger and choosing patience instead. It means recognizing when fear is holding you back and stepping forward anyway. It means training your mind to focus on solutions rather than problems, progress rather than setbacks, strength rather than weakness. And here's the challenge. It's not a one-time decision, it's a daily practice. The mind wants to revert to what is comfortable, to what is familiar, to what is easy, and it will, unless you deliberately and consistently choose otherwise. This is why mastery is rare, because it requires constant effort. It demands that you remain aware, that you remain intentional, even when it would be easier to slip back into autopilot, but the rewards are undeniable. When you combine awareness with intention, you take back control. You stop being a victim of circumstance. You stop being controlled by your impulses, your past, your unconscious habits. You become the kind of person who speaks with purpose, who thinks with clarity, who acts with discipline. And that kind of person can shape their world instead of simply being shaped by it. This is the path to mastery. Pay attention, make conscious choices, and repeat again and again until self-control is no longer something you struggle for, but something you embody. Everything in your life, your words, your thoughts, your emotions, your habits, is either working for you or against you. And the difference between those who remain trapped by their impulses and those who rise above them is not luck, nor talent, nor some innate superiority. It is awareness. It is intention. It is the daily commitment to mastering yourself before the world has the chance to do it for you. Because the truth is, self-control is not about suppression. It's not about pretending you don't feel anger, doubt, or fear. It's about recognizing those forces within you, understanding them, and then deciding deliberately, consciously, how you will respond. It's about refusing to let your emotions dictate your actions. Your negative thoughts shape your future, or your words undermine your potential. Mastery is built in small moments, in the space between impulse and action, in the choices you make every single day. And those choices will define you. They will determine whether you remain at the mercy of old patterns or take charge of the life you are capable of living. So pay attention. Speak with purpose, think with clarity, act with discipline. Because the person who masters their words, their thoughts, and their emotions masters themselves. And the person who masters themselves has the power to shape the world around them.